everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today we have a special one. We got a returning guest, Kourosh, and I'm excited to get him on here today to talk to you guys because, um, we talked to him once back when he got his summer internship, which he was obviously very excited about. And a lot has happened since then. Long story short, he had to go through full-time recruiting again, but I'll let him tell his story yourself, tell his story to you himself. Um, and so that's been a journey. And so really we're just having him back on to now talk about his full-time recruiting process because we know that a lot of you have kind of like been in similar situations or will be in similar situations in the future where where you find yourself having to go through the full-time recruiting process as opposed to summer internship process. And to be honest, like those two processes are very different, right? Which I'm sure Kourosh can tell you about in a second here. And so, hopefully what we talk about today will also just give you guys some insights and um, help you out on your own journey as well. And because quite frankly, like full-time recruiting is a lot harder than summer internship recruiting. So anyway, without further ado, Kourosh, thank you for taking the time to get back on here with us. But if you don't mind, maybe just kind of introducing yourself a little bit, tell us kind of like the story of your investment banking journey, just to like, for people who are not familiar with kind of like, what you did before this and how you got to where you are today. Like, let's give people kind of like the download on everything.
Thanks so much, Sam, and appreciate it and very happy to obviously speak on my journey. But yeah, so initially when I came to college, I go to U Chicago. I started off pre-med, but like many students there, kind of found myself taking econ courses, got interested in finance, and was able to lock a pretty good sophomore year gig. I was at a securitized products trading desk in New York. And I kind of played around a little bit with on-cycle investment banking recruiting my sophomore year, like through my resume here and there, but wasn't really trying too hard as far as like networking or really trying to polish my resume, my LinkedIn, or even my technical skills. I
Mm,
was kind of intimidated by that whole process, and I wasn't sure if that was for me. But in my sophomore summer, I slowly realized, banking, was a career for me with, all the optionality you have and the career trajectory and working with different businesses. And I think that because of that, I, saw your videos a little bit and got in touch with you. And I knew at that point I was kind of late in the game, and this was something I became really passionate about in New York my sophomore summer, talking with a lot of bankers and people in my close network. So I came to you. I think I signed on July, my summer going into my junior year.
mm,
And at that point, very limited opportunities. So I really had to grind. I remember having like 3 phone calls a day in the summer and early fall. And, you guys are always in my corner. And one thing I really liked about the program, it really lays out how to go about, each step of the recruiting process. And like I said, I was turned off by like how intimidating it was, but if you go at, networking first and then obviously resume to technicals, behaviorals, like the way you guys laid out really helped me and gave me the confidence I needed. And ended up getting 2 offers actually in the fall, 2 bulge bracket offers in New York. I took one of them and, it was very exciting. I feel like I worked extremely hard for that. And obviously did the interview with you then. And, I had a great summer as well. Maybe a little bit of a slower start, but, I was on track the whole summer. My junior and senior mentors were both vouching for me to join their vertical for full time. But ultimately, I didn't get a return offer alongside like a large cohort of my intern class. Obviously the summer is very difficult. A lot of headcounts on Wall Street, or headcount reductions. But that's where I was, and then reached back out to you guys. Got the red pill advice I needed. Got to pick myself back up, and I knew it was going to be very difficult, but at that point, I think what I utilized the most from you guys was just the community within Wall Street Mastermind. I remember like either messaging other people in there or you and getting connected with these other groups on the street. Some Wall Street Mastermind alum that were there that were willing to help me, as well as obviously continuing to use like the technical guides and all the industry specific stuff you guys had. So I had a lot of interviews, landed 2 offers, and I'll be in LA full time at Bulge Bracket as well. So really excited about the outcome, but definitely was a lot of hard work had to be put in. It was pretty difficult.
yeah, that's awesome, man. So a lot to dive into there. But I guess, just to give people a bit of context, 'cause I don't know when people are going to be watching this or whatever, but basically, your summer intern class was the summer 2023 intern
Yeah.
class. And so that was obviously like, a very rough year in terms of return offer rate, just given where the economy was at. Like the Fed was, raising rates and market was tightening. Deal flow was, kind of drying up. And so a lot of firms started cutting back on hiring. Um, and that was coming off of kind of like when you guys were recruiting sophomore year, it was like, during COVID, during the pandemic, when deal flow was super high, everybody was understaffed. And then so basically it was like a double whammy where when you guys recruited, the banks were overhiring and then the market tanked. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden they had all these interns and not enough full-time offers. I don't know if you know, like, do you know what was the return offer rate for your group or your firm overall?
Um, my group was 60%. I don't know about my firm though, but yeah.
Yeah. So 60 is like really low, right? Like in a normal market, I would say it's closer to like 80 to 90, which basically is like, look, unless you are truly really, really bad, or you just like lack common sense, or you just like lazy, or you don't have, good work ethic, then like it's almost like getting the internship a lot of times is you're like virtually guaranteed that you're gonna have a
Yeah.
full spot to return to. This year was not the case, right? Like 60%. We saw some groups that had like 50%. We saw some groups that had 0%,
Yeah.
which is like crazy. Like we had some students from Welsh Mastermind who I won't name the bank or the group, but got just like you got like good reviews, everything. People loved them, and then their group gave 0 offers,
Yeah.
and so he just like didn't get a return offer. So it's like sometimes you do get unlucky like that, and because of market conditions, which is completely outside your control, by the way, um, sometimes it's just gonna happen where you might not get a return offer. In fact, like that happened to me too, right? It's like I'm a lot older, but I did my internship in summer of 2007
Yeah.
at Bear Stearns, and that was the summer when Bear Stearns, two hedge funds collapsed, and uh, that was like the first domino for like the financial crisis in 2008.
Yeah.
Except when I didn't get a return offer for that, it was also challenging because it wasn't like Bear Stearns had fully gone under yet. If they had, it would be like a much cleaner story. But their hedge funds had gone under. The bank was still around when I was recruiting. So then like people kept asking like, well, did you get a return offer? And I had to explain to them like why I didn't get a return offer. And it's like, well, I don't know, like maybe something's just like wrong with you. Maybe you're just a bad intern. And it wasn't until like I finished full-time recruiting that Lehman Brothers or not, no, sorry, JP Morgan acquired them. Right. But like by then it was like, oh well, I'm already done recruiting. So long story short, it's like stuff like that happens. It's happened to me, it's happened to you, it's happened to a lot of other people. Um, but sometimes like, when life knocks you down, um, all you can do is control the things that are in your control, right? And
Exactly.
like I think a lot of people will kind of tap out at that point. It's like, all right, well, wasn't meant to be. But for the few who are willing to keep going, I mean, it still doesn't guarantee you're going to succeed, uh, but it is possible to succeed, right? It is possible to come out the other side with an offer that's just as good, if not better, right? Like, I mean, to your point, you intern at a Bulge Bracket Bank for your summer internship, and now you're ending up at a Bulge Bracket Bank for full time. And I would say the offers are pretty comparable. Would you agree to like what you would have got if you had returned to your summer internship group? I would say it would have been pretty comparable.
Yeah. No, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm happier where I am now with full time. I think it's a better team. And it'll be a better experience for me as well because it is a smaller team, and I think, surprisingly, I think I landed somewhere better than I was this summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Which is like, look, that's I'm not gonna sit here and tell everyone that like that's what you should expect,
Yeah.
right? There's no way to sugarcoat this. It's like if you get unlucky for the summer and you don't get a return offer for whatever reason, I think like the more likely scenario for most people is that you're happy to just get back in, and
Yeah.
it may be at like a slightly worse offer or a slightly smaller bank or maybe a group that's not as good as the group that you had before or whatever, right? But you never know, right?
Mhm.
And so I think maybe let's dive into that a little bit because now people are probably wondering like, well, so how did you actually end up at an offer that you're even happier with? I don't
Mhm.
think that was necessarily like your expectation going into the full-time recruiting process,
Not
right?
at all.
So talk to us about your full-time recruiting process and like I guess maybe to start, let's educate people a little bit. What would you say was the biggest difference between full-time recruiting and junior summer internship recruiting? Because now you've gone through both,
Yeah.
right? Like what makes full-time recruiting harder, I guess.
Yeah, I would say full-time recruiting is a lot more comprehensive. I think junior or summer recruiting is like, okay, is this guy, pretty intelligent? Do we like him? We have 10 weeks to assess him. With full-time recruiting, it's like they're hiring you full-time based on, these interviews. So the biggest thing I noticed was, they obviously cared a lot about speaking to my references and getting more details about, my performance this summer and whatnot. And then beyond that, from a technical perspective, it was a lot more comprehensive, I would say. I think my super day, for instance, was like 4.5 hours or 4 hours about there.
Yeah.
And it was like probably 80% technicals, 90% technicals. Before that, I had to like speak to pretty much most of the bankers in the group as well. That was mostly behavioral. But at that point, I think they're really trying to like, um, see how good of a candidate are you really versus trying to get to know you as much.
Yeah. For sure. I think the interview is harder, and I definitely want to double click on that in a second there. Um, I think the other thing that just makes it so much harder is just like math. It's just like the number of jobs available, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you shared this with me earlier, but I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But like, what were like how many people were going for this job that you ultimately accepted, and how many jobs were actually available?
Yeah. So it's a regional office at a Bulge in LA. They only take two analysts every year, and they had one spot open. They said they received, I think, 1,500 applications. They phone screened over 100 people. I think they held a couple super days, so they super dayed maybe a dozen candidates. So extremely competitive. I knew a lot of those candidates did have return offers, so I definitely had to be on my A game. Like I'd have to interview perfectly, my references would have to be good, you know what I mean? And I definitely held myself to extremely high standard. I realized there's a lot of people right now that are in my shoes and a lot of people want that dream of investment banking. And the honest truth is like if you want to achieve your dreams, you gotta take that dream away from somebody else. So every night I thought to myself, I'm stressed, I'm studying right now, but so is the guy who's also gonna be my super day. So
Yeah.
it really challenged me to be the best version of myself. And I'm very grateful having experienced that.
For sure. So you said 1,500 applicants. They phone
Yeah.
interviewed 100 people.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, right there, it's like 6 to 7%
Yeah.
of the people get a first screen. And then from there, you said maybe a dozen people make it to the super day, right? So that's like less than 1% of the applicants make it to the super day. And then even when you get to the super day, out of the dozen or so people, there's only one job.
Yeah.
So I mean, dude, that's ridiculous, right? Like 1 out of 1,500 is 0.067%, right? And so, like, look, the reason why I wanted to share those statistics is just to give people context for like everybody already knows investment banking recruiting is hard. Summer internship recruiting is hard, but like the acceptance rate for summer internships at these bulge bracket banks is usually anywhere from like 1 to 2%.
Yeah.
And then for full time, it's like a fraction of that because the majority of the full time spots have already been given to returning interns, right? And so you're literally going for the last, like even in a normal market, like I said, like probably 80 to 90% of the summer interns will get returns, and then like whatever spots they're recruiting for full time are just like the leftover spots that have not been filled for whatever reason. So it's gonna most groups are only going to be looking for one person or two people. Like that's always going to be the case. There's never going to be like a group that's like, oh, we need 5 people or whatever, right? When I recruited for Deutsche Bank, it was the exact same thing. I don't have the stats on like how many people applied and got first round interviews, but when I went to the Super Day, it was exactly what you said. About a dozen of us from all different banks and schools and whatever, and then there was one spot,
Yeah.
right? And I got that one spot, and so you literally have no margin for error, and you just have to be perfect with everything because
Exactly.
it's tough. And to your point too, like you said that some of the other people that were at the Super Day did have return offers.
Yeah.
And so it's not even like you're just competing against other people who also got unlucky and didn't get returns. It's like sometimes people get return offers, but they want to get an even better offer because
Yeah.
maybe they want to like upgrade to a better bank or whatever. And so they're still in the pool. And obviously the elephant in the room is like, why should we hire you over them if they are perceived as to like have performed well over the summer, whereas you're perceived to maybe have performed well, maybe not because you didn't get a return offer, right? And
Yeah.
that kind of a lot of what they have to dig into, right? Um, so let's talk about that a little bit too, because I feel like that's probably the hardest thing for people to overcome when they're full-time recruiting. And I'm sure you, I don't know how many you say you got two offers for full-time, which is great actually. A lot of people just want one, but like I don't know how many interviews you had to go through to get those two offers, but I'm guessing like in every single interview or every single firm that you had to interview with, you probably had to explain like what happened over the summer and why you didn't get a return offer, right?
Yeah.
Talk us through that and like how challenging was that? And also like how were you able to, I mean, obviously, clearly you were able to convince people
Yeah.
that, it wasn't because you were just like a bad performer, because I'm sure like they wouldn't have hired you otherwise. So like, how did you kind of handle that? It's a very tricky question, or like, how did you kind of navigate your way through that?
For sure. I think it is like the most important question when you don't have a return offer. And I think the most important thing is taking some degree of accountability, but also really painting a picture of like, you know, the true story behind what happened and making sure your references can also vouch for the things that you say. So for me, the way I kind of pitched it was, um, I was on track the whole summer. I had no issues, was fully expecting getting a return offer. And then when my staffer brought me in the room, said that they had to make unexpected headcount reductions. Obviously, it took me aback, but I also explained how, like my junior and senior mentors both really liked me and were pushing for me to join their verticals full time and trying to paint a picture of, I performed well, the people I was close with liked me, but it was just like a headcount cut. But I do take some accountability as far as like, I think there's ways I could have maybe shined a little bit more based on what my staffer had told me. He said, I was in a bulge bracket, the biggest group at the bulge bracket I was at. There was 20 summer analysts, no deal flow at all. So the experiences different summer interns got varied a lot. And he just told me like straight up, the ones that were cut were just people that they thought didn't have the best experience. That was like, through random staffings, and they weren't necessarily as confident bringing them back full time. And that's kind of what I explained, and it made a lot of sense. And having good reviews, having my junior, senior mentor having my back, I think really pulled through, and people were able to really believe that, I was just unlucky this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, did you get any like coaching on kind of like how to answer that question, or like how did you come up with that, I guess?
Talking with you mostly, I think you definitely gave me the framework for it. I mean, I spoke with the whole Washington Mastermind team about it, and I know with the offer I got in LA that I signed on to, I was really close with one of the associates who I'd networked with in order to get that, and he kind of coached me up a little bit on how to like polish my answer a bit because he really liked me. And he said, this is kind of what we're looking for. A lot of candidates are saying such and such, but we want to hear a little bit more accountability. So I kind of pitched it a little bit in a way that, I think appealed to them. And I think that's really important as far as networking and having someone like that that can give you a little bit of insider info. And, that really helped me out a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know that accountability piece is a really nice touch that I don't think most people have that, because I think like the instinct is to almost like be overly defensive about justifying why why it wasn't your fault,
Yeah.
right? But I think it's always good to show that you also take some ownership and accountability for, well, even though it wasn't, without saying it was your fault, but just like also staying humble and
Exactly.
demonstrating that you recognize that there are still things that you could be doing better, right? Which even if you did get a return offer, that would still be a true statement, right? Like there's always things you could be doing better. So I think that's really good feedback. So the other point that I wanted to kind of go back on, which you talked about earlier too, was you said that the interviews are a lot more comprehensive, I think was the word you used, but it sounds like, there were many rounds of technicals, like 4.5 hour interview, 89% of it was technical. And it sounded like the type of technical questions that they were asking you was also probably more advanced than the types of questions you were getting during the summer internship process. And so like talk about that a little bit. Like what was different about the technical interviews versus kind of what you had to experience going through the summer.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is, with the summer interviews, it's a lot more basic level, more surface level. Do you understand it? But having full-time recruiting, you've seen a little bit more this summer. Hopefully you learned a little bit more. So they're really trying to see like how much did you retain from this summer. So a lot of the projects I worked on, like where I had to like I built out like a DCF or some other technical concepts. They really dug deep into those, as well as just really trying to see if you understand how these various technical concepts really work and how they kind of intertwine with one another. I think that's like what really helped me is, I've always used like your technical modules throughout, like even my internship when I was confused on a concept, I look back and watch those videos and honestly, like it really gave me a good basis of like understanding everything, the way like you lay everything out, obviously showing like videos, like showing the models you're building out and the questions, like going through them really so you understand it. That really helped me out a lot because then I was able to have that foundation and then just practice reps and just practice different questions. So I felt really prepared from a technical perspective. And, the questions I got asked were definitely a lot different than my summer internship. I think they really try to like throw you off. They're not asking you the basic questions, but because I had that level of understanding, it really helped me out. And, I think I've gotten help from you guys from a lot of different things, but I think as far as technicals goes, like I really appreciate like the way you lay it out and it helped me out a lot for full time.
Yeah, for sure. I think we emphasize this for even summer internship recruiting too, which is just like the importance of really understanding the concepts in a way where it's like you can apply it to real world situations, or like the real test is like, can you teach these concepts to someone else who
Yeah.
is like a finance newbie, right? Because like if you could do that, then that's the real test for whether you actually understand something, is if you can teach it to someone else. But I think like where a lot of people make mistakes is even when they're prepping for just a summer internship process, it's like, they're memorizing answers to specific questions without really understanding it. And then they're hoping that, they'll get asked those exact same questions or whatever. And like, that just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't really work anymore for summer internship recruiting, but it sure as hell doesn't, is not going to work. If you somehow are lucky enough to get by with that for summer internship recruiting, it certainly is not going to work for full
Yeah.
time. Right. And to your point, I think the biggest difference is like, they're not asking you like, basic questions that you can memorize from the guides anymore. Like for full-time recruiting, it's mostly like talking about the deals that you worked on. And then like when you're talking about those deals, it literally has to be application knowledge, because it's not like, oh, how do you do a DCF? But it's like talking about the DCF in the context of this deal that you worked on. Why did you
Exactly.
make why did you make these assumptions, right? Or
Yeah.
how did you come to this valuation? Like, and did you think about doing it this other way? Or what are all the different cases that you built? And so it's like it just it's almost like going from like undergrad level coursework to like PhD level coursework. You have to take like another step
Yeah.
up, right? And I think so. I think like the really important thing too then is kind of like what you said, which is as you're doing the work during your summer internship, I think a lot of people, sometimes you're drinking from a fire hose and you're just like trying to survive. So you're not even thinking about like, what am I actually doing, and what is the story we're trying to tell? You're just trying to like get the work done on time without
Yeah.
mistakes, so that like, you don't get yelled at by your MD or whatever, right? But it's really important actually when you're doing a summer internship to make sure you actually like study the work that you're doing, or like, you put together a pitch deck. Like, what is this pitch deck trying to say? Because I mean, I've been there when I was junior banker. Sometimes I'm just like, your managing director gives you a markup for like exactly what they want on the slide, including like the exact bullet points they want to see, and all you have to do is like type it out and process it, and you don't even have to think about what you're typing, right? It's just like sometimes you
Yeah.
get into that mode of just like, okay, I don't care what I'm doing, I'm just gonna do it. But really, like, what you if you know that you might have to recruit for full time, you have to be able to talk about those deals almost as if like you were the MD,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Like the MD usually does all the thinking for you, or your associate does all the thinking for you on the job. Sometimes you can get away with that as a junior person. But like if you're gonna interview, like you have to be able to say like what they would say about
Yeah.
the deal. Like, what was the rationale for the deal? Why did you guys make the assumptions that you made? And the answer can't just be like, oh, I don't know, my associate just told me to assume that. Like,
Yeah.
like that's not a good answer, right? And so, I think most people don't realize that. And so like if you're not approaching your deals the right way, then that's gonna hurt you later on if you have to recruit again. And so like yeah, that does take extra time. Like you have to take extra time to go back and review some of our modules when you didn't understand something and make sure you really understood it. And like it's a good thing that you did that, right? Because otherwise you probably again, given how small the margin of error is for full-time recruiting, like if you tripped up on any of that during the interview process, like then it probably wouldn't have worked out.
Exactly. No, 100%.
Yeah. Um, I guess, we're coming up on we have like a few minutes left here, so I want to make sure, but I guess having gone through the full-time recruiting process now, probably like the last question that I are would be helpful for our audience is just like, do you have any other advice for people who are maybe in a similar situation as you? Let's say maybe they did do a summer internship, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and they have to re-recruit for full time, or maybe like sometimes people, um, just didn't realize they even wanted to do banking until like even later than you did, and so maybe they didn't even get a junior summer internship in banking, and now they have to recruit for full time for whatever reason they're recruiting for full time. Is there anything else that we haven't covered already that you think uh would be really useful to know for someone that's going into the process?
For sure. I think the biggest thing that I realized is like not leaving any stone unturned. Full-time recruiting, a lot of it isn't applications. It's like some people won't even put applications out. They'll just be like, we need an extra spot. And guys will just reach out to people they know. So I knew that I had to network really hard, and how I got kind of my foot in the door with City LA, the offer that I got. One of the worked there. He was a Chicago booth who I'd been connected with for a little bit over 2 years, and someone who I always checked in with. He was really excited when I got my offer for summer, and he was someone I was pretty connected with alongside a lot of other people. So reaching out to him when I saw the application, getting on the phone with him, telling him, my story and everything was really, really obviously put me over the edge as far as, getting those phone screens and initial interviews. And that's one thing I quickly realized is, like it is tough. I interviewed, I think, 7 or 8 places. A couple places went to the final round and then was told they no longer could hire anyone. So it was really challenging at times. I knew that, the competition would be very difficult, very limited spots. So I really had to make it a priority of mine. And I think it just taught me resiliency, but more than anything, like not leaving any stone unturned because you never know. And that'd be probably my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, that's that's actually probably the best advice you could have given. And I should have asked you about that earlier, but I forgot to, and I'm glad you brought it up, which is, yeah, I think most people also don't realize this. Like the other reason why full-time recruiting is so much harder than summer internship recruiting is that for summer internship recruiting, every single job gets posted, no matter
Yeah.
what, right? Like these firms will have applications posted on their website, and you know exactly like, how to go and apply for those jobs. Whereas for full-time, because first of all, not every group is going to hire. And then like because some groups will just fill their entire class with their return summer interns, like especially the groups that had really, really low return offer rates, like a lot of times it's because they had more interns than they could bring back already, so they don't have any spots available. But for the groups that do hire, like we said earlier, like it's usually one spot. At most, like I maybe seen 2 spots in the same group, but usually it's like one spot. So when it's just one spot, like they don't necessarily need to go and post the job publicly, um, because there's no shortage of candidates, right? Like to your point, the offer that you got had 1,500 applicants for one job. Like they
Yeah.
don't need that many people. And so a lot of times what they do is instead of posting a job publicly, they'll just ask the people that are already in the group, whether it's analysts or associates or, whoever, like, hey, we're trying to fill one more spot. Like, do you guys know anyone that you think, would be a good fit? And then like it's just by referrals only, right? And so it's like if you don't have like good networking contacts in not even like at the firm, but like in the right groups within the firms, like in the groups that are actually hiring. If you don't have good networking contacts there, who are willing to vouch for you and like kind of throw your name into the ring when the time comes, then a lot of times you just won't even know where the opportunities are, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like for you, this person that you, I think the last piece of advice I want to kind of like highlight for people too, uh, which reading between the lines, you didn't really say this, but sounds like this contact that helped you with this office, like it was someone that you had been networking with for a long time already.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, full-time recruiting just started and let me like hit up this brand new random person. And I'm sure you did that too, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, like it's someone that you probably networked with all the way back during like summer internship recruiting. And even then you weren't like super transactional about it. It sounded like you still kept in touch with them throughout this entire time. And so there's an actual relationship there, which is like very important because I'm sure there were a bunch of other people reaching out to him during full-time recruiting too. But like if they were just trying to reach out to him now, or they're a brand new person, or they're very transactional, whereas you've had a relationship with him this whole time and he actually likes you, of course, like, he could probably only refer so many people,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And it's gonna be a lot more likely to be you than these other people because you have actually like a genuine relationship with them. And it's like that takes time, that takes work,
Yeah.
and like you're not just doing that with this one person, you have to probably do that with a lot of people. But like ultimately, like that's really what it takes,
Yeah.
right?
100%. And I think like the biggest thing is it taught me how fickle this industry is and how important it is to really like maintain those relationships. Like I'm still talking with bankers I worked with this summer because you never know, honestly, anything can happen. And a lot of people want to like, I don't know, move up the ladder or lateral or whatever. And I think it's just important to just keep those connections because banking really is a relationship thing as far as, moving up the ladder, getting the job you want. So that's what it taught me.
The relationships are the most important thing, man. It's especially like the older you get and the further along you are in your career, it becomes less and less about what you know and more about like who you know, right?
Yeah.
So, always try to not burn bridges, always try to like, everywhere every stop you get to, try to um make some, good relationships that you can keep with you forever, and like you just never know when it's gonna come back around. So
Yeah, exactly.
um awesome, man. Well, that dude, honestly, I think you shared so many insights on this call that I know for sure will be super helpful for people that want to go through full-time recruiting. And so, thank you for doing that. And I would just say, look, guys, for those of you who are still with us, um, if you find yourself in a situation where you have to go through full-time recruiting, whether it's because you didn't get a return offer, or maybe you did, but you just want to recruit for a better bank, or maybe you just like didn't even do a summer internship because you were late to the process and you were doing something else. Um, Regardless of what the situation is, it's going to be extremely challenging. And so, like, if you want some help with the process, uh, to make sure that you have everything uh, like on point and just in the best shape possible, like, there's no margin for error, right? So, whether it's your interviewing skills or even like getting those interviews in the first place, if you're looking for help with any of that stuff, we're gonna encourage you to reach out to our team. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wall st mastermind.com/apply. And we'll just get on a call with you, learn more about you and your profile and your situation, what you're hoping to accomplish. And it just give you a very honest assessment on like, what your chances are and whether we think we can actually help you. And if we can, like what actually needs to be done in order for you to be successful. And so regardless of whether we can help you or not, like at a minimum, we'll try to give you some advice on like what you should do regardless, whether that's with us or without us, right? So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and book that call, and we look forward to talking to you guys. All right. So with that said, Kourosh, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us on what is this, like Wednesday night, right? And so yeah, I really appreciate it, and dude, super happy for you. Obviously it's been a journey. Really enjoy working with you both during your summer internship recruiting process as well as for full time. And I'm sure we'll stay in touch. And if there are other things that come in the future that you need help with, like we're always here for you, and you're part of the family. So
Yeah. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this, and you guys always preach being in our. That's I really did feel that, and obviously it was a lot of hard work, but I really enjoyed and appreciated all the help that you guys gave through both summer and full time recruiting. So, thank
hey
you.
man, it was our pleasure, and you earned it. You deserve it. So Hey man, look forward to seeing what you can accomplish, and yeah, definitely stay in touch. All right. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. That's gonna be it for this episode, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future, and until next time. All right.